Before we begin configuring our data center network, I want to show what our format will look like. So this is the secure CRT program that I talked about and what we will be using, and we are currently connected via console to each device within our data center topology, and these are reflected in the tabs above here. So DCC1, or in short, what I will be saying is DC1, is in the first tab. This is our primary data center core switch. DCC2, or DC2, in short, is the second tab, our secondary data center core switch. DCA1 is the third tab, which is our access switch number 1, and DCA2, access switch number 2, is in the last tab. So here we are currently showing the console for DC1. But the host name is different and it will not be changed for this series because the equipment exists at a customer location that we're able to access remotely. Now we discussed what the hardware will be for our data center topology, but how can you view those details on the equipment itself? That is probably the best part to start this series for learning about Cisco Nexus switches. We know that both of the data center switches are using the Nexus 7010 switch. Now to view those details, you can issue the command show version. Let's type that in here. And this will show a lot of great details. So for example, on the very first line, the top line here, we see that this switch is running the NXOS software. We even see the NXOS version that is running on the switch, which is located right here, is running version 6.22, and the location of that OS bin file, which is located right here. So very similar to Cisco iOS, as you can tell. Under hardware right here, you will see that the Nexus 7000 series model that we are using is the 7010, including the supervisor engine module that is used. You'll also see things like the uptime and when the switch was last reset, so which is right here. So the uptime here is about 28 days, and we see basically when the last set or the last reset has occurred on the switch. Another useful command is looking at the inventory list by using the command show inventory. And this is a great command because it shows all the hardware that exists on this particular switch, like the I/O modules and the supervisor engines that exist inside of this Nexus 7010 chassis, including which slots they're currently in. So for example, the first entry that we see here, this reflects the chassis body that we're using, which is the Nexus 7010 with 10 slots. On slot 1 here, we are using the 10 gig M series I/O module. On slot 2, this has a 10 gig F series I/O module. And on slot 5, this is where the supervisor engine 1 module exists. And the slots on the back, which starts at slot 11 and downward here, this will reflect the fabric modules, the power supplies, and the fan trays that we are using. When we use the command show interface status, here you will see a list of several Ethernet ports that are listed, among others, like Ethernet 1/9, even Ethernet 2/9. So the first number here reflects the slot number, and the second number reflects the individual port. So that means that all of these Ethernet 1 entries are 10 gigabit ports on the M series I/O module. And all of the Ethernet 2 entries are 10 gigabit ports on the F series I/O module. So this command will show other details as well, like the interface status. It will show the VLAN assigned, or if it is a routed port. You will see details of the speed and duplex and what port optic is used. Now we'll be using this command again several times in this video series. Now let's run through the same set of commands on one of our data center access switches, which is using a Nexus 5000 series. Let's go to DCA1, let's go to that tab, and let's do a show version. Okay, so there under hardware, right here, we see that this is a Nexus 5020 series or particular model which has 40 ports that can be used for 1 gig or 10 gig connections. It all depends on the optic that is used. And we see that the NX-OS version running on this switch is right here, which is 5.21N17. Now let's view the inventory list on this switch. Okay, and this will show the same details that we talked about in regards to the switch model and the number of gigabit ports. Plus, we see something in module 2 right here, and this is one of the expansion modules. This currently has an 8-port, 1, 2, or 4 gig fiber channel module that can be used with a storage network. We'll also see the details of the power supplies and the fan trays that exist inside of this switch. And for our last command, let's go ahead and type in show interface status. Okay, and this will show all 40 fixed ports on our Nexus 5020 switch, which will require SFP port optics. Now these optics can support either 1 gig or 10 gigabit, which is supported on this switch. Now most of the ports that we will be using will be 10 gig ports acting as uplinks to the core layer. Those ports are basically right here that has currently a not connected state. Now for Ethernet or for ports Ethernet 1/1, this is where server 1 will be connected to, and this has a 1 gig SFP optic installed. Now the status right over here reflects an SFP invalid because that port is configured by default as a 10 gig port, and once again the SFP optic installed only supports 1 gigabit Ethernet. Now once we configure that switch port, we will specify the speed as 1 gigabit Ethernet, and that will clear the status error right away and become connected, which you will see. So that is a quick overview of the hardware that we are using and the format for how we will be configuring this network. Therefore, proceed to the next video as we officially start configuring our data center topology with classical Ethernet services.